Hey everyone! Today on the plastic canvas I'm going to show you how to build up a monster Fleshtone. Hey everyone, Matt here from the Plastic Canvas and welcome to today's painting video. And like I said in the intro, today I'm going to show you how to build up a monster Fleshtone, and to do that I'm going to use Brog here from Gatefall. Now, when I say a monster Fleshtone, I just kind of mean one that's just not quite human. So if we look at the finished skin tone here from Brog, you can see it just doesn't quite have that same warmth that a human skin tone does, and so that's just kind of what we're going for, something that's just not quite human and more fits a monster. So to lay down the base coat, I've gone with Earth Brown, and the reason that I went with Earth Brown is because being a mid-tone brown, it's going to leave plenty of room to go darker for the shadows, but then also plenty of room to go lighter for the highlights, because contrast is definitely something that I wanted to build up here, so I just wanted to start somewhere in the middle. Now obviously with monster flesh tones, you can do lots and lots of different colours. With something like Brog being an orc or something similar to that, I mean green would also fit really well, but no matter what basic colour you're going with, just start with a mid-tone colour so that you've got plenty of room to go darker, but then also plenty of room to go lighter. Alright, so now to start highlighting, I'm going to be sticking with Earth Brown, which is that base coat colour, and then I'm just going to gradually mix in more and more Bone White. And the reason that I've chosen Bone White to mix into the Earth Brown is because just being an off-white, it's going to gradually lighten and lighten the Earth Brown, but without adding any warmth to it. And like I mentioned earlier, part of what makes this a monster flesh tone is that it doesn't have that same warmth that a human flesh tone normally does. So, to build up these highlights, I'm just going to do it layer by layer, gradually mixing in more and more of the Bone White. So for this first layer here, it's mostly Earth Brown with just a bit of Bone White into it, and you'll see I'm going to be covering a fair bit of the surface area, just really anywhere that any amount of light's going to be hitting. And then each layer from here, as it gets lighter and lighter, will gradually cover less and less surface area. And the more layers that we can do that over, the smoother that the blends are going to be. So if we make sure that we cover plenty of surface area with this first layer of the highlighting, it's going to leave us lots of room for all of those layers that are going to come. The other thing that I'm doing with each layer is just feathering out all of the edges. So once I've put the paint down where I want it, I then clean off the bristles. I'm a brush slicker, but you can just use your water cup for that. And then with slightly damp bristles, just feathering out the edge. So just spreading it away from the direction of the highlight. So that as that edge gradually becomes thinner and thinner, it allows more and more of the coat that's underneath to show through. And that's how we're going to get smooth blends. So just layer by layer, we're going to gradually lighten and lighten the tone off by adding more and more of the Bone White in, gradually reducing the surface area and making sure we're feathering out the edge of each layer just so that we get those nice smooth blends. And as you can see, as we're reducing the surface area each layer, we're just gradually reducing it towards where the brightest highlights are going to be. So say on his chin there as an example, every layer I just don't quite spread it as far from the point of his chin around towards his jaw. I want that brightest highlight to be right there on the front point of his chin. Same thing with the top of his head. You can see I'm still at this layer covering a fair bit of the top of his head, but by the final layer it'll just be the very top just to make it look like that's getting the most amount of light. Alright, so just to add to that overall monster look, we're just going to add some skin blemishes here, just like some sun damage or something like that. So I've just taken that earth brown, that base coat color, mixed in some black, and now I'm just doing different sized dots all over his skin. So some on top of his head, some on his chest, just spreading them around, but just some bigger dots, some smaller dots, just putting them here and there just to make it look like there's been some sun damage or skin damage, something like that. And now we're going to start building up the shadows. So for this, I'm going to be using Agrax Earthshade, my dark brown wash. And the reason I'm using washes is because I just want to keep the blends from the shadow through to the highlights really, really smooth. And with how thin washes are, being able to feather out those edges, we'll be able to get those really, really nice smooth blends. So all I'm doing here is just putting the Agrax Earthshade where I want the shadows to be, and then just feathering out the edges, just so that it blends in nicely from where I want the deepest part of the shadow to be, into all of those highlight tones from earlier, with really, really nice smooth transitions. If you were painting something more like an orc and building up a really, really cool green skin tone, then obviously here for the shadows you'd be using a dark green wash. And now here, just to make the deepest part of the shadows really, really dark, I'm doing a second layer with the Agrax Earthshade. So I let the first layer completely dry so that these don't mix together at all. And I'm just laying it down where I want the deepest part of the shadow to be, and then just not feathering it out quite as far as what I did last layer. And that'll just help keep that blend from the darkest part of the shadow through to those highlight tones really, really smooth. And now just to really finish that nice smooth transition off, I'm going to be using my sepia wash. So this is just going to be that transitional tone between the Agrax Earthshade wash and then those highlighting tones. So this is just going to go down over the shadows and then just feather out a little bit more than what the Agrax Earthshade did, just so that we then get that really, really nice smooth blend from the darkest part of the shadow, which is the Agrax Earthshade, through to this kind of mid shadow tone, which will then blend nicely into the highlights. And you'll notice that we painted all of those skin blemishes earlier on before doing all of the shadows. That's so that as all of these washes then went down, they would go over the top of those blemishes as well, and it would help them to look as though they're part of the shadows as opposed to sitting on top. And so there we go. That's how I built the monster Fleshtone up on Brog. So thank you very, very much for checking out another one of my videos. I really do hope you enjoyed it and found something in there that you can take away and use in your own painting. If you did enjoy it, please do consider giving the video a thumbs up, as well as hitting the subscribe button if you haven't yet, to stay up to date with future videos as they keep coming out. I'm going to keep releasing a few more videos on Brog, showing how I've created some of the different textures and effects. But that's going to do us for today. So until next time, this is Matt from the Plastic Canvas signing out. Happy painting, everyone. Cheers.